Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines. I had a lot of comments on tubeless tires and everybody's saying that should I install a new tire on my rim when it goes flat because it says tubeless tire on it? No, they're just tubeless at the factory. They call them tubeless tires. Since they're not going on a vehicle that we're driving down the road, we can put tubes in them and it doesn't matter. So what you have to do, I'm going to start, this is like a John Deere tire. I mean, this is off a Cub Cadet, but the tire that one of my customers was asking about, if you look on your tire sidewall, it'll say the size. All right, so it's 20 by 8 by, I guess that's 20 by 8 by 8. And what you want to do is you want to go to your local lawn and garden place, or you want to go to maybe a Home Depot that might sell them, but you want to find a tube that is 20 by 8 by 8. Alright, and this one is 20 by 8 by 8. This is just a Kenda tube. There's many different brands that make tubes. I ordered this through my distributor, not a real big deal, but you just make sure you get the same size as a tire as a tube. Alright, my tools that I'm going to use today is, you have an air chuck, you have the valve stem tool that takes the valve stem out, a couple screwdrivers, of course your air gauge, and a pair of snippers here to take out the valve stem from your rim. Alright, I do use a slap hammer, a sliding slap hammer to take the bead off the rim. Whatever you guys got to do to make it work for you, a hammer and a wedge would probably work pretty well in there. And the first thing I do is I take the cap off the valve stem, and if there's any air in your tire, but if it's flat there shouldn't be, I take your valve stem tool and you unscrew the valve stem. That just makes sure that there is no air. It just actually had air in it. All right. So I just want no air in it when I'm about ready to break the bead of the tire. All right. So I take my slap hammer and I do everything from the valve stem side. Okay. I'm going to break the beads on both sides, but we're going to work from the valve stem side of the rim when we put the tube in. Okay. So we're going to break the bead. Some of these are harder than others. This was actually pretty pliable. It's about 90 degrees right now, so everything's a lot more pliable to work with. All right, so that wasn't too bad. 2 hits. I'm gonna go grab some air. And so I got air hose here. All right, now like I said, we always work from the other side. I work from the valve stem side. All right, so what you wanna do is get the valve stem out. I tend to do it before I take the tire off the rim, and I'm only going to take a half a tire off. You don't need to take the whole tire off when you're putting a tube in, but you want to get this valve stem out. So I'm taking my pliers here, the cutters, snipping from the bottom, snip it right through, and it'll come off. And then I try to catch the inside of it. It was the back side, and there it is. So we have our 2 pieces of our valve stem. You don't want to leave inside the tire, obviously. All right, and I'll show you what I do with the tube right now. We're gonna take the tube out. When you get the tube, believe it or not, there is actually a right side to me, it's a right side and wrong side. When you put these tubes in, it kind of looks like, you can just stick it in the rim and it'll be fine. Well, it's not the case. I always put air in the tube to find out which side the valve stem is gonna point up in what direction. And I'm just thinking out loud here, I forgot to add a small pair of needle nose vice grips to grab this when I'm done, but I'll grab it from my toolbox. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit of air in the tube. Okay. Now I was taught back in the day that when the blue line is up, the valve stem's on the right side, but that's not the case with all these tubes. I've noticed these tubes definitely. I've seen the valve stem on the other side. If you look at this tube, this valve stem is more on the top side. If I turn it over, that's more on the bottom side now. We want to have the valve stem on the top side of the tube when it goes into the rim here, because the valve stem hole here is more or less on the top side of the rim. So we want to make sure that we have the tube on the top side, make sure the valve stem is sitting on the top side when we put it in the tire. Now, unfortunately, we have to take all this air out of this tire to make it easy enough to put back in the tire. So the tube's got to be deflated, and this one's pretty straightforward. All you got to remember is that the blue line on top of the tire here is the top side. So you flatten this all the way down. Try not to get your valve stems mixed up. Throw the old valve stem away. and use the new valve stem that we have there. You don't want to put the old valve stem in a new tube, even though it probably would work. But okay. Now we're going to take the half side of the tire off the rim. And like I told you in my other video, if you push in on a tire and try to get the tire into the closest part of the rim, that makes it easier to get this other side, this side, up and off the rim. So I usually put my knee on it down here. Get my, I like my pry bar here, which I made from it's like a screwdriver pry bar. And I always tell people baby steps, little bit at a time. That's all you have to do, a little bit of tire at a time. It might take 3 or 4 screwdrivers to get that tire to bite and stay up on the rim. Once you get the tire to stick up there, then you can get all the other stuff out, and you can just start going around it until it's all the way up. All right, you go to the other side, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, and it'll eventually come off. All right, now once it's up like this, then this is how we can put a tube in. But we're not gonna put a tube in yet until I use gloves, and I'm very careful, but if you have a thorn, there's a reason why your tube went flat. I mean, your tire went flat. You have to check for any imperfections in here. If you have a lot of debris in your tire from running it flat and maybe dirt got in there, I use a little vacuum cleaner. There's not much dirt in this at all, anything at all. But you might want to vacuum out the tire. You got to make sure, and I go all the way around the tire with my hands, and I usually use the back side of my knuckles, and I just slide them down here. Trust me, there's a lot of thorns that can be in these tires. If you come across any kind of thorns or any imperfections, a nail sticking out, that's where you get your dikes or your cutters, and you try to work them out. Somehow you got to work them out. You can use a small screwdriver and poke them through. It won't affect, unless it's like a 1/4 inch hole, it's not going to affect the tube at all. If you do have a big hole on the inside and your tire is still in good shape and there's no dry rot on your tire, you can patch the inside of the tire prior to putting the tube in. But this is just a video for how to put a tube in, and this tire is good to go. There is nothing sticking through it. It was very flat, and this is one of my tractors, so I'm going to put a tube in it. So now that we have that all taken care of and we know that there's nothing coming out and around it, we have the tube with the blue side up, which we know the valve stem was in the upside of that while the tube was on the blue side. So now I find out where the valve stem hole is here, and I just start putting the tube in the tire, and I try to make it as even as I can, going in. Alright, just kind of push it all in there and make sure it's pretty even. And I always keep the valve stem close to the hole of the rim, because eventually, when you get everything around the rim, I put the valve stem through the hole, and this is where our valve stem tool comes into play again. So if you take the valve stem tool, okay, if you buy one of these, it'll have, this is actually to either hold it or to clear out the threads if you have threads on the outside, but I use it to keep the valve stem from going back in. So I screw the valve stem tool onto the valve stem. Now it will not go back into the rim. You get the rest of your tube situated on the inside the rim. Make sure it's on the inside of the rim, not on the outside at all. So now the tube is all the way around on the inside of the rim. Now we're sitting pretty right here. All right, I like to make sure that this stays pretty straight. If it starts getting cocked at an angle when you put it on, sometimes you can move the tire left and right. You see how it's moving? Okay, you see how it moves? Try to keep it straight as you can. And then we also I use a small pair of vice grips at the final end when I put air in it. We'll do that in a minute. But right now, it's pretty straight. We're gonna put the tire back on. Like I said, try to get the tire in as far as you can on the rim. That helps you in the beginning. And then little teeny bites. Little teeny bites, that's all you gotta do. And it definitely helps to have the tire pliable, which means if you have to put it out in the sun for a while to get it nice and warm, that's awesome. You don't want to bite off too much. I've seen guys bite off too much here, and you actually split the tire. You don't want to do that. So little teeny bites, as I call it. And then just push this on, and there we have it. All right. So now we have the tube in. You can move the rim too, if this is not straight. Now it's straight. What I do is I get a small pair of vice grips, and very gingerly, you find the right pressure, not too tight, so you don't pinch it too hard and you might rip it. Nice and gentle, so at least it won't go back in when you're putting air in it. This is where I get Simple Green. I love Simple Green for putting tires on. I used it on my last one. Just use a little bit of Simple Green. Simple Green is not going to irritate anything. It's not going to make anything deteriorate the rubber, I guess you call it. But I use it so it'll bead, it'll sit the bead, it'll properly push it out onto the rim, and it won't give you too much of a big pop and a bang. I think they tell you you're only supposed to put so much air in these tires, but I just use the compressed air. Take your valve stem tool off. You have to put your valve stem back in. It's right here. Screw that in until it's nice and tight. And then this rear tire, you can read the sidewalls. It says inflate to 10 pounds, I think, or somewhere on here. 10 pounds right here. I usually put this is a rear tire. I usually put them about 11, but when I'm seating them, when I put the spray around here, I'm just trying to seat both sides. So once I see one side pop up, you feel them come up now. All right, now they're pretty. Go over to this side, you can see that it has seated. If they're not seated properly, you'll see a gap. And then you're just gonna have to do what you gotta do you might have to take them down again and put more lubricant in there, but Simple Green works great. I guess you could use any kind of cleaner as long as it doesn't deteriorate the tire and the tube. Okay, now I know I'm gonna check how much air we have in here. All right, we have 8 pounds. So I'm pretty safe to say that I can release this. If this feels like it's getting pulled one direction or another, and you won't really know until you take this off. See, it actually flexed up a little bit. Okay, that's not bad though. That's actually a pretty good. Sometimes if they flex one way or flex the other way, you're gonna have to take the valve stem back out, put your pliers on so it doesn't get sucked into the tire. You don't want that to happen. Put your vice grips on, take this valve stem out, and then release all the pressure, and then you can kind of move the rim around to get this thing to sit straight again, and then you have to redo it. But this is good, and I'm gonna take it up to 11. And I just use a digital gauge. Digital gauge works great until you hit slime. If you ever use a digital gauge on a tire that had slime in it, you're gonna ruin a digital gauge. Now, if you ever push this valve and you hear air coming through this little, where the valve is not actually adhered to the rim, it's just sticking through it. A lot of times you'll hear hissing through that hole for a while. Don't be too concerned. It may take 20 seconds, or it may take longer, it may take, like today, it was like no air come through at all, but the air has to come out somewhere, and this is the only way out from where the tube takes up the air in the tire and compresses against the tire. So you may hear hissing. Now, if it hisses and hisses and hisses for like 5 minutes, you probably didn't get the thorn out of the tire that was in there to begin with, and it popped your tube. So be really careful and check the inner tire very well all the way around, and double check it before you insert the tube into the tire. I'm gonna check this to make sure all right, we're at 12.5. Take it down a little bit, but 12 is fine with me. It's gonna go down a little bit anyway. And then they always give you a cap, which I lost. Here it is. Put the cap on, and boom. We just installed a tube in the rear tire. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe.